wondering how I got into this mix.
This is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network. Today I wanted to talk with you guys about the recent ramping up of fake news propaganda, this push towards conflict with Russia and Syria, and also Donald Trump. The majority of what I'm talking about is going to be coming from my article written for Activist Post, which I'll post below. It's called The Establishment's Plan to Divide Donald Trump, Fake News, and Russia. I definitely recommend that you read the whole thing. I'm going to try not to read the whole thing and just give you a brief overview of it. And I know that it's bound to upset some people who truly believe that Donald Trump is an outsider, anti-establishment candidate. That's not my take on things. And I think if you've been paying attention for a while, it would also be apparent to you that nobody gets into positions of power without being selected and put into that position. I don't care if you think they're not a politician or they're an outsider. It seems like the quote-unquote elite, globalists, powers that wish they were parasitic class would understand, hey, let's pick somebody outside of the norm, like a non-politician, and deceive the people once more, and they will continue to play the game. So let me just tell you a little bit about this article. It says, since the moment of the polls closed on November 8th, the Western establishment media and their partners in the state and corporate classes have been working overtime to embed another propaganda-filled narrative deep into the minds of the American public. This operation involves President-elect Donald Trump, the recent fake news meme, and Russia. What is the goal of this operation? To further divide the American public between statist, establishment-worshipping minions and principled, critically thinking truth seekers. Let's take a look at the pieces of the puzzle. So first, Donald Trump. And as I just said, I am not of the supporting of the narrative that Donald Trump is an outsider, but I also want to make it clear I'm not a Hillary Clinton supporter, Barack Obama supporter, Bernie Sanders supporter, Gary Johnson, Jill Stein, or any of these other people that ran for office or are planning on running for office later in the future. They are not going to get my support. And as far as I'm concerned, they're actually a part of the problem. They either think that they're going to change the system from within and they keep people fighting within that realm, or they're actually actively shilling for this establishment to propagate division and support for a dying system. Either way, they don't get my support. And again, I don't buy the narrative that Trump is an outsider who somehow duped the corporate media and long-term politicos with his victory that nobody claims to have seen coming. Again, you don't get into positions of power without being approved. Your vote doesn't matter, guys. I'm sorry to break it to you. Presidents are selected, not elected. And it seems like many of the alternative media, quote unquote alternative media, seems to have forgotten this and is now actually gone to supporting Trump. And I think that's really telling. We're seeing those of us who are looking for truth should be aware of who's pushing Trump. So in the incoming months and years, it becomes obvious that he is more of the same. We can remember who fell for it or who purposefully pushed disinformation. Either way, in my view, Trump's role is that of the great divider. He's been brought on board to say absurd one-liners that can be repeated by the media and create a panic in half the population that believes Trump's going to launch World War III. And meanwhile, Trump's already betraying his supporters by breaking campaign promises like every president before him and putting in people in positions of power that show that his interests lie clearly with big oil, the oligarchy, and the big banks, and more of the same. So Trump basically gets the privilege of running his mouth with controversial statements, whether he means them or not, and the media is happy to repeat everything he says. The bottom line is that Trump is the establishment's anti-establishment candidate. He is being used to create division while promoting a false resistance to the true establishment. Part 2, fake news. So if Trump is the establishment's wolf in sheep's clothing, the fake news meme is the establishment's tool for distraction and division. Since Trump has been declared the winner, the corporate media has pushed story after story claiming that government insiders have evidence that Russians interfered with the U.S. elections by propagating fake news stories that favored Trump and attacked Clinton. And since then, they've gone even further and said that Putin was directly involved and that WikiLeaks is a part of this, and really just trying to demonize WikiLeaks and get people to not look at the information that has been exposed related to Hillary Clinton, but also an attack on Trump. So again, it plays into the narrative that Trump is an outsider, anti-establishment, they hate him so much. A couple of weeks ago, the Washington Post and other mouthpieces for the establishment, they ran with a couple of reports, including one from the organization Prop or Not, which claimed to identify websites that were spreading, quote, fake news and quite possibly working as Russian propagandists. This list contains every single outlet that I write for, including the Activist Post, Mint Press News, the Free Thought Project, the Anti-Media, and many other independent media outlets. Essentially, the corporate media is repeating baseless accusations in an attempt to demonize both Trump and his supposedly unexpected victory and Russia. This all feeds back into this love or hate Trump loop, further dividing Americans. Those who hate Trump feel justified in their discontent and are happy to buy media lies about Russian interference in the election and fake news spread by uneducated Trump supporters. On the other side of the fence, Trump supporters feel justified in their distaste for the corporate media and their apparent anti-Trump bias. The media's focus on Trump and repetition of unconfirmed rumors from unnamed government sources fuels the anti-establishment mood of the pro-Trump camp. And again, I want to stress that from my analysis, I conclude that Trump is a part of the program. He's keeping people divided and distracted while the American public fights about the veracity of their news, and the government searches for ways to begin regulating independent journalism while pretending to care about truth. The bottom line about fake news is that it's being used to attack independent media that offers an alternative take to the party line. It also happens that the fake news meme serves as a way to divide Trump supporters and critics, as well as point a finger at Russia, which brings us to part 3, Russia. Throughout this election process, the corporate media made reference to Trump and his friendship with Putin over and over, saying that, this is a dangerous position, it could end up hurting America, and this is just a continuation of the never-ending Cold War era mentality where Americans are taught that Russians are evil and that any American who dares to support or cooperate with Russian officials may be a Russian agent, if not simply just a bad American. And the corporate media has repeated claims that Russia was behind the hacks of the DNC that led to the release of Hillary Clinton's emails from her chairman, John Podesta. And WikiLeaks released tons of these under the Podesta leaks, damaging Hillary Clinton's reputation. And essentially now the U.S. is saying that the corporate media repeated a bunch of false or compromised stories leaked by WikiLeaks, and that Julian Assange is probably a Russian agent. And it's increased now. Just as December 9th, the Washington Post claims that a CIA analysis has proven that Russia interfered with the election. Now the FBI is getting on board, and we have officials calling for investigations into the matter. The Electoral College just recently confirmed Trump again, but still, Americans have now had doubt cast into whether or not the election's results should be seen as legitimate because they're being taught and told that Russians interfered. This alleged interference from Russia has also helped pass legislation specifically aimed at combating foreign propaganda, or at least that's what the corporate deadstream media would have you believe. The Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act was recently passed as part of the yearly military budget known as the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA. If you know about the NDAA, it's probably because in 2012, President Obama signed indefinite detention of American citizens who are suspected of terrorism as part of the NDAA. Now, with this Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act, it claims that the U.S. has a priority to develop a whole-of-government strategy for countering foreign propaganda and disinformation. The bill will increase the authority, resources, and mandate of the Global Engagement Center to include state actors like Russia and China, in addition to violent extremists. The bill aims to, quote, counter foreign disinformation operations and proactively advance fact-based narratives that support U.S. allies and interests. Despite this deceptive language, it's pretty clear that the establishment wants to delegitimize any independent media or opposition as simply puppets of the Russian or other foreign governments. And the bottom line here is that the establishment, political class, media, and corporate partners are working overtime to convince the American public that WikiLeaks, Donald Trump, and the independent media are simply pawns of the Russian government. The great conclusion here of the whole thing is this. By spreading the fake news meme, the elitists behind the American power centers are able to attack the growing independent media icons by painting us as propagators of false Russian propaganda. The media is also using this fake news meme and Russian prop to accuse Trump of being an illegitimate president, further playing into his Trump is an outsider narrative. All of this is being done with the goal of keeping the domestic front as divided as possible while selling the brainwashed masses into another war. Coincidentally, all of this nonsense is taking place while the corporate media spreads lies about Syria and Russia. Trump is the great divider, playing his role to keep the people fighting while the parasite classes take down the independent media and sell the American public into a proxy war with Russia. Will you allow this game of deceit and misdirection to lead you down a path of ignorance, jingoism, and death? Or will you do something about it? Will you look past the lies of the fake news, deadstream corporate media? Will you get involved in your community? Will you seek solutions? Because that's what it's going to take now. Is it's going to take each of us to push past this, see past the lies, actually get involved, do something in our communities, and not just sit around and spread lies or just expect that somebody else is going to come save them today. It's time to get active. So thank you guys for listening. This has been Derrick Broze for The Conscious Resistance. Peace.